Minute, councillors. I'd like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the City Governance Committee meeting on the 2nd of December. I declare this meeting open at 11:53. I'd like to advise attendees in the room that this meeting is being webcast and audio recorded. We have a number of leaves of absence to go through this morning. The first one is for Councillor Fraser. The motion is on the screen. If I could have someone to move that. Thank you. Councillor Murphy. And seconded by St Ledger. Are we seconding? Yes, we are. Great. All those in favour? It's been carried. Thank you. And the next one for Councillor Heremiah is on the screen. It's moved by Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor St Ledger. All those in favour? It's been carried unanimously. Next one is for Councillor Wilcox. Someone to move that. Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Stamp. All those in favour? That's been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And we have an apology from Councillor Bannon. There is now a motion displayed on the screen to confirm the previous minutes. Do I have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Seconder? Thank you, Mayor Raven. All those in favour? That's been carried. Thank you. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Now to refer to the declarations of conflict of interest. Do any councillors wish to declare a conflict of interest today? There being none, I'll refer to the reports on today's agenda. Yes, thank you. Does anyone have any general business for Executive General Manager of People and Engagement, Ms. Kim Bryan? Kim, do you have any for us?
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. Our staff are the backbone of our organisation and they achieve many things both in their professional and personal life. So I wanted to share with you just a couple of the staff achievements from the last quarter, and we do acknowledge and celebrate these internally, but it occurred to me that you may not be aware of some of these achievements. We celebrated our years of service in October, and we had staff who were acknowledged for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 and even 40 years of service. And that's a very important event in our annual calendar. Cassandra Mai is from our Water Partnership team, and she was awarded the Australian Water Association Young Professional of the Year. In the LGX Awards, we have won an award for the best use of video for the pause and order video, which I'm sure many of you recall. We had our next cohort. It was the 16th year of having our leadership development program, and we had our graduation mid-November. Varun Lai is another water team employee, and he represented Australia in the World Powerlifting Championships in South Africa, winning 3 gold medals, a silver medal, and he broke 2 Australian records. Paula Weston, who's in our corporate communications team, has published her 6th novel called The Shadow of Eagle. Alicia Fiang has been awarded the Queensland Public Libraries Association Cheryl Horton Scholarship, and he is going to do a project on looking at trauma-informed approaches to customer service in libraries, and that will take her overseas. And the Planning Institute of Australia for Queensland awarded several awards to our teams, one being a well-deserved for the Wellbeing Diversity Award. We also won this category and took out the overall win for the United Nations project and the Livability Survey for the UN Habitat Quality of Life Award. And tonight we're celebrating the 21st Annual Trainee and Apprenticeship Awards. And so they're just a sampling of some of the things you might know about our talented staff. And at this moment, I'd just like to say thank you and Merry Christmas to the councillors, your family, and to the community on behalf of myself and all the employees at council. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kim. That's some really good news. That's fantastic. Moving on, reports. We're starting with 6.1. I note that 6.1 is a confidential report. A proposed resolution to move this matter is displayed on the screen. Do any councillors wish to move into closed session for this item? Staying out? All right. We will have the motion on the screen. Any councillors ready to rip in and move that? Thank you, Mayor Raven. Seconded by Councillor Stemp. Give you another minute just to read the motion. All those in favour? That has been carried. Thank you, councillors. Does anyone have any general business for the general matter of waste, resource and recovery? Mr Asnicol. Smashed it. Do you have any for us?
No, I don't, Chair. And I'll be back at Planning Committee tomorrow as well. Right. Thinks of anything overnight.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right. 6.2, Local Infrastructure Program. Marg, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. The Local Infrastructure Program report for December 2025, endorsing new projects and amendments. All proposals align with the LIP policy. There are updated attachments 1 and 2 to be tabled, which list 12 new projects proposed for an approval to the combined value of $784,000, and attachment 2 lists 2 project amendments. Happy to take questions.
Any questions? Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, and thanks to the team for being flexible. I had a meeting about dangers on Mays Avenue, and fortunately for us, council officers were already working on road safety options for Mays Avenue, and after the car went through the fence and onto the rail line, and then another one went through somebody's front fence, lucky for us, they had a price tag ready to go, and that's been included in this tranche. The other thing is the adjustments to 101 FM. Now, that's a citywide station. It's in my division. The total cost for the upgrades will be about $85,000, but it's making sure that the people that keep us up to date with local news actually have a safe working environment. So, again, I'd love to say thank you to that. And it's also about the upgrades to the Veterans Homeless facility that we now have operating in Logan City in Division 2. The first of its kind I'm aware of in South East Queensland, that a council has offered homeless veterans a safe space to go while they wait for their housing options to become available. So I just want to say thanks very much to the team for taking in late ones and making sure that they're added to the list. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, through the chair. Like Councillor Lane, I just wanted to say thanks. The LIP funding for Division 12 for the stormwater drainage work will only help with flooding issues on the golf course, but we have been trying to get that job done for the last 2 years. Thank you to Andy Lee, who has come on board to help me with that particular project. It's a great result.
Being no other questions, we will table the updated attachment. There's a motion on the screen. Let's have someone to move that, please. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Someone to second that? Councillor Murphy. All those in favour? Thank you. That's been carried unanimously. We'll move to the motion to approve that list. There's a motion on the screen. Would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Someone to second? Councillor Stemp. Thank you. All those in favour? That's been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 6.3, monthly financial performance report. Let you speak to that. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents Council's financial performance for the period ending 31st of October 2025. Operating surplus was 31.55 million, which is 16.49 million above budget. Operating revenue is above budget due to higher private works, development assessment fees, water charges, commercial waste volumes and interest income. Operating expenses are slightly above budget, mainly due to higher private works and biosolids treatment costs. Capital expenditure is also above budget, primarily due to timing of projects within Logan Water, Parks and Road Infrastructure. There has been a couple of risks identified in the depreciation expense, which we based on a desktop valuation of our buildings and also the ongoing monitoring of employee costs. Happy to take questions.
Councillor Lane.
Mark, did you just say there was a problem with biosolid costs?
The biosolid costs are higher at the moment due to having to transport from the gasifier.
So we had 40,000 tonnes of CO2 taken off the road, or greenhouse gas emissions taken off the road. We're back on the road, or?
We are on the road at the moment, yes, and the gasifier should be back online by the end of this month. So we should see those costs decrease again.
Okay, thanks. And the other thing in this report is the state government, TransLink, has stopped funding the bus stop shelter program, and it won't be replenished, is my understanding. I'd just like to mention that on Sunday I was at the local global markets and TransLink were there about their new rail line, and I mentioned that ratepayers had spent $30,000 on a bus stop that their new rail line was going to obliterate. And so they've kindly offered to go back and advocate to replace and replenish that in a new location. I think when it comes to TransLink, we need to continue our advocacy for those bus stops because they're important to older people and they're certainly important to our community.
Mayor Raven.
Great work, Mark. Thank you very much. I just had a question about with the key capital project information, with all of the excellent data you provide, this seems like an extraordinary level of transparency, which I'm very impressed with. Do you know if other councils are as good as you, or are you like a standout in your field?
I'd like to say we're a standout.
Awesome, because I went and had a quick look at some reports. They don't have anywhere near this kind of detail, so I can't imagine how their councils properly exercise their fiduciary responsibilities by making sure their organisation is being run well. But I'm just so impressed with how much detail you've provided the capital, particularly around the key capital project work that shows people exactly where their money is getting spent. Are there variations on that budget? Like, it is so good. So thank you very much. I know it takes a bit of work to produce that report. I just wanted to express my gratitude.
Thank you, Mayor.
Awesome. Councillor Stemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because of all this great information, I have a few questions, if that's okay, because I like to delve into things a little bit deeper sometimes. It mentioned there about the budget assumed a 7% revaluation increase in depreciation, but mentioned that we thought it probably would be higher than that. I know depreciation's a tricky one, I get that, but just wonder why we didn't maybe budget a little bit more in terms of, more than 7%.
It really comes down to what we know at the time of when we're doing the budget. So we
Okay.
prepared the budget starting this time last year.
Yep.
And now we're at the point where we're getting to the next sort of valuations. We know unit prices have moved considerably as well
Okay.
during this last year. So even though we have allowed for an amount, it's anyone's guess where it comes in at.
Okay, so we sort of have to come up with a figure and then just sort of, there's one that we have to adjust accordingly. Okay, all right, that's fine. I had the same question about the biosolids, but it also mentioned about water losses. Do we know why we've had way the normal water losses?
So the team are working through a backlog of maintenance issues at the moment.
Okay.
So we are seeing and hoping to continue to see a decline in the unaccounted for water,
Okay.
but mainly comes around the time it takes to actually get there and fix those leaks.
Okay.
Some great data for you if you want it.
Yeah, that would be great. The SEQ City Deal Public Art Initiative, there was a 41,000 there. I'm guessing that was what the cost was to get the designs done. Is that correct? Or do you know? If not, I'll just take that one on notice.
I'm sorry, whereabouts are you?
Oh, sorry, I'm on page. Oh, I noted every page but that one. Sorry, I was between page 40 and 46. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. I got. Thank you. Through the chair, that's for concept design. So yes, it's just
So that was those concepts that they just come up with. Okay. And Noxious Weed Services, 41,000. Just curious, what was that? Why that was a separate line item? I think that was between those same pages as well. There were the two I didn't put a page number on. I'm sorry. That was 41,000.
I would have to get it.
That's all right. No, if you can just come back to me on that
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
It talked about the parks toilet program. It said that they'd done condition reports and noted which parks were going to be upgraded. I'm curious to understand in what order. So do I contact Parks for that one?
Yes, that'd be
Yes.
great. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do that. Community Assets Reserve is, I believe, increased or by 9,395,000. Just curious to what the other charge. It says other change on that one under the reserves.
Sorry, in the reserves listing?
Yeah, sorry, a reserves
Okay,
listing.
so the Community
Yeah.
Assets Reserve, that does fluctuate depending on the dividends from the waste business unit.
Okay.
So that does fluctuate, and then it depends on how much they're actually spending out of that reserve as well.
So that's what the other line would be, the other one? Yeah, okay, so that's to do with that. And just finally, the Undergrowth Economy and Sustainability branch. It says materials and services are 1.26 million above budget, primarily due to overspend on other advertising associated with the Let's Get It Sorted partnership and increased waste collection costs driven by city growth. Just curious how much related to the overspend on advertising. If you could come back to me on
I'll
that
have
one.
to provide you that one.
Yeah, that's great. That was all I had. Because when they're too tied together, made it sound like that was a lot of money spent on advertising. So, thank you.
There being no other questions, we'll have a motion on the screen. To note this report, if we can have someone to move that. Thank you, Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor Hall. All those in favour? That has been carried unanimously. Item 6.4, proposed amendments to contract manual December 2025. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. Following an internal review and audit recommendations, we're proposing amendments to the contract manual to strengthen governance, transparency. Is it on? And accountability in procurement. The changes include updated references, clearer roles and responsibilities, enhanced conflict of interest management, and improved oversight of exception-based procurements.
Mayor Raven.
With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I have many questions and perhaps some feedback. Great work, and I know that this is your first cut at making the contract manual perform better. There'll be no surprises that my interest is focused mainly on local and social buy. In section 1.4 on page 110 of the agenda, it refers to local buy and social buy together. They're quite vague references. They sort of point towards the policy, but I know that the policy also points back to the contracting manual and says, hey, you should check the contracting manuals. At the moment, they're doing this, and neither one is giving specific KPIs. So it would be great to have targets, both achievable and stretch targets for each separately, rather than lumping them all in together. I know that some contracts will tick both boxes because they'll be local and social, and in that case, they can feed into both KPIs, but some will be only social and some will be only local. So it'd be good to have them separate rather than just lumping them entirely. On page 120, you've got a section here that says council will procure low value goods and services by sourcing a written quotation or quotations from a local business in the first instance. Only where evidence is supplied that local businesses cannot supply are not considered capable or do not represent value for money can other quotations be sourced from non-local businesses outside the local business boundary. How do we audit that they've provided that evidence? Because it says that every time you use a non-local business, there should actually be some pain involved, because you've got to provide evidence, you've got to jump through hoops, you've got to basically do red tape in order to spend money outside the city, which I think is great. Nothing incentivises people more than making them have to do some extra work to do what we don't encourage. So how do we audit, and where is that evidence kept? So if a councillor said, hey, I want to see every single time you've spent below $50,000 on a non-local business, is there a spreadsheet somewhere that we could just ask and pull up to look at, or is it done on a case-by-case basis, or is it how do you audit it?
Through the chair, we actually require evidence that the requisitioner has attempted to seek local quotes. So that needs to be attached to their purchase requisition, and then procurement order a percentage of purchase requisitions.
And then, so when that gets attached, how often does a ground truthing get done? So if I go, I can't possibly find anyone that prints in Logan, just picking a random example off the top of my head because I've got a whole bunch of Christmas cards in front of me. I can't possibly find someone that could print stickers inside Logan, and here's my evidence to that. What do they do? A Google search that shows that there's no Logan businesses? How do you prove a negative, I guess?
They can do a Google search. They can also look on Vendor Panel, for example, and there's other, the Chamber of Commerce also has information on there, so evidence such as that is required, yes.
So if that's being done, I'm really confused about how come I continue to see non-local businesses being put forward when I know there's locals in the city that provide that service. And printing is one that I know off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are many, many others, because that's just the tiny amount of procurement that comes into my awareness. There'd be huge, if it's happening on something as simple as printing, where I know we've got 6 or 7 businesses at least, probably many more that have the capacity and capability, then, and I'm seeing that money not being spent local, how do we, why is that happening? And I know they're small projects, and even I have the same questions for the RFQ process, which is from 50 to 200 grand. And obviously it's not working. Whatever's in there now isn't working, and it doesn't look like you've made significant changes to those parts to harden up those controls. So I guess, how do we start doing? Do we start publishing a report that confirms what we're spending money on and who we're spending it with, so that it's publicly available? Thanks, Mark. Great idea. I love that you do that. What can we do to harden it up? Because it's this, as I said during the policy advisory group, these policies have been in place for 7 years. Russell, former councillor Lutton, and I were the driving force behind it, and we're 7 years later and we're not really achieving the goals still. So how do we do it properly this time? We were told that the solution was moved to the advanced procurement model. We're here now. It's still not happening. So how do we use the advanced procurement model to get the outcomes that I think ratepayers expect, which is that in the first instance, you should spend money locally, even if it is a little bit more expensive than going to some mob from Sydney or Victoria, or God forbid, Ipswich.
If I may, Mayor, through the chair, we deliberately were waiting for the release of the Queensland Procurement Policy 26, which was only released mid-November, to ensure our criteria for local purchasing was consistent with state policy. So the proposed changes for this round of the contract manual are primarily in line with audit requirements, but we'll be updating the contract manual early in the new year to include tighter and clearer requirements around the local content.
Excellent. And so I'll give you all of the questions I've got to feed into that work then. So on I have the same question I just asked for the RFQ process on page 121. For section 6, I have a very similar question. How do they prove local businesses were considered? Because the term considered is a funny one. Like, if I thought about it, local business, then did I consider it? Like, and how do I prove that I did that? And how are we going to report on that? And then on page, I'm going to guess I'm still on the same one. On page 131, which is section 7.1, significant contracting plan. How is local weighted and considered in this when you're doing this level of contracting? And then that's it. That's all of them. Easy. So when is that coming back? January? February?
Sorry.
When are you coming back to us with these great changes? January? February?
March.
Is that the first time you considered? I feel like you're making that decision right then.
I think, just to follow on from what Rebecca just mentioned, is we also have recognised that the organisation isn't really aware of how to assess the local supplier. So we'll be rolling out an actual education campaign in the early new year as well, just to around the contract manual changes. Plus, how do we actually, assess for local supply and looking at those weightings and how we can make them work.
Nothing like accountability, though, to have it on display. And because I assume it applies to us as well, but no one's ever conditioned me, and I use local by default generally anyway, but there's councillors that do professional development. Did they source that type of training locally first? And have we all been trained in that? I haven't. Has anyone else ever been spoken to about making sure when they do acquisition? No. So councillors probably need that training too, or at least council advisors, because I've never been challenged on, did you use local for this purchase? So it'd be interesting to make sure that we're doing it as well, because between us, we probably have about, I'm going to guess at a hazard, about $400,000 of office budget in total that could be spent locally. And I think it'd be much, much better if we were doing that. I assume most of us do anyway, because we know local businesses far better than staff may. But it'd be good to make sure that we are, and I'm happy for my spending to be publicly exposed for its local buy alignment, because I think it's really important that if we're going to spend $500 million a year, that we spend as much of that as possible with local businesses to support local jobs in the economy.
Thanks, Meg. Great comments through the chair. What we'll be doing is lifting our audit requirements as well. So we do have a minimum level of audit that we do look at the purchase orders prior to releasing. So we will be stepping up that as well. So it's going to be a combined effort, which will form part of that education process.
Councillor Stemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, based on this new information coming through and so forth, is it possible for us to have some kind of workshop before that so that it doesn't come to us? Because I feel like there's a lot in this. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time going over it myself, but there's so much in this, and I agree that there's things that just aren't working. And I think if we could maybe workshop, with the councillors to try and get some ideas about how we can make it better, I think that would be beneficial as well before it came back as another report. So that's my suggestion.
Absolutely.
Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, and Mr. Mayor, all of my private funds are spent locally, maybe with multinationals, but they're local people serving us. The Code of Conduct, council's policies on Code of Conduct. Every time a councillor does something, they're required to confirm that they don't have a Code of Conduct or a conflict of interest in the course of their duties. And I never receive a report that says that officers have that same level of seriousness. I just wonder, whenever I'm making a decision on a local buy, for example, the local infrastructure program projects, whether or not I can have that confirmation that there is no conflict of interest as part of the officer's duties, but also that the level of local buy is listed in there. I know it's often not, but sometimes we do get some wonderful local contractors in to do electrical services and other things. So it'd be really good to be able to point to the local buy that we're currently doing as part of those local infrastructure program projects. Thank you.
Excellent. We will have a motion for this report on the screen. Is there a question or a move? Question or a moving?
I'm happy to move it. I've done commercial contracts for about 10 years in real estate, and I don't think I could have done much better. So kudos to you. Thank you.
Someone to second that? That's seconded by Mayor Raven. Everyone in favour? It's been carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.5 is the mid-year review 25-26. I note that 6.5 is a public report with a confidential attachment. A proposed, do you want to speak to it, or do we want to go into confidential? Is there a public? Yeah, so we'll go with public, and if you want to go confidential, let me know.
Thank you, Chair. This report seeks adoption of the amended budget and capital program for 25-26. The operating surplus was revised down by 5.55 million to 35.483 million, mainly due to bringing forward the payment of the 25-26 financial assistance grant, increased commercial gate revenue, interest revenue, higher garbage collection, and adjustments to employee costs. There's been a number of material favourable impacts, including interest revenue in the commercial gate revenue, animal registration fees, and operating grants. Material unfavourable variances include operating reprovisions, investment attraction incentives, property maintenance, environmental offsets, employee costs, external fleet hire, and garbage collection. The capital program has been updated to reflect reprovisions and branch reviews. Also, as part of the mid-year review, general reserves were assessed with $1.1 million relinquished to support working capital.
Any questions? Councillor Stem.
Sorry, yeah, no, I've got one, but don't worry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always have a few questions on this one because I love the idea of contingencies, so we don't have to come back and have these come through. So I guess I still struggle with some of these items. I feel like there should be better contingencies in some of these items, but I understand that there probably aren't, and I don't know how we make that better for the future. But the main question I've got, or a couple of questions, the operating reprovisions, just remind me again, because I think probably ask the question again and you probably tell me the same answer every time. But they're pretty much items we've approved previously. They haven't been spent and they come back through again for spending this time round. How often does that happen? Like if it's not spent this year, does it just keep coming back, or is there a period of time? Can you remind me again what the period is?
Yep. They can only come back twice.
Twice.
So we have got new reprovision guidelines that have now been implemented,
Yes.
which specifies that any of those can only come back twice, and then it comes to council as a part of relinquishing that money because it was originally a council decision.
Yes, okay, so two periods, okay. And can I just ask, the Gossia addressing knowledge gaps, was that a grant initially? Just wondering what that is. I mean, I know what a Gossia is. It's in the reprovisions. It was 63,000. Yeah.
Yes, it was a grant, and it comes back out because it went to contract liabilities, so then it gets reversed into this financial year.
But that's been spent already, or no? Hasn't?
It will be spent this financial year.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yep. Okay, so that was that one. So the investment attraction incentive fund. So I understand there's 288,000 not yet spent, but they're requesting additional funding. Is that correct? Do we know why that didn't come through the budget?
There's a number of triggers that have to be met to actually release from that incentive attraction fund. At the time of building the budget, they weren't aware of who was going to hit what triggers, and that now that they are very much aware of that, so we've been able to bring it down into an expense line from the reserve.
Okay, so they're asked. So we've got 288 there already, plus an additional 512. So it'll be a total of about 800,000.
That's
potentially correct. For this financial year.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. We already approved that.
We have. So I'm just trying to
Sorry, I just don't remember it coming
again.
I thought that was in.
So there was a reprovision of 288,000,
Yes.
which was included,
Yeah.
and then an extra amount of 512,000 has been included because there are going to be extra businesses hit that trigger.
But it hasn't. That wasn't approved as part of the budget last year.
Well, it's actually no, it wasn't approved as part of the budget. It's actually sitting in reserve. So there was a budget. It was adopted in the budget a few years ago, but instead of putting it in an expense line, we put it in we can only draw down from the reserve.
That's all right, because I thought that program was coming to an end. That's why I was a bit confused. Yeah.
The funding hasn't been fully utilised yet. It was
No.
a 3-year program.
Okay, no, that's fine. What else was there? I mean, there was a few other things like the corporate property maintenance costs. Again, just curious. I would have thought there'd be a certain contingency in that. There's an extra 322,000 there. Was that something seriously unforeseen?
Yeah, I can talk to that one. So that's part of the realignment of the building. So in terms of a number of buildings have moved over to the corporate property team.
Okay.
So since those buildings coming over to the corporate property team, they did condition assessments.
Okay.
And those condition assessments have identified urgent works
Okay.
that weren't
Weren't included
foreseen when the budget
in the
was put
budget.
together.
Okay, no, that's fine. And again, the external fleet hire, additional hire costs of 629,000. Again, do we know why they wouldn't have been included in budget?
So in terms of the fleet hire, they've actually reduced the budget.
Okay.
So-
Sorry, I go the wrong way. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought okay, sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, it has been increased
Yeah.
because there has been an additional hire required for some of our large fleet items, which were previously. So because of the maintenance requirements on our older pieces of fleet, we're having to hire in more of the larger, like excavators.
Okay, and just the last one was the garbage collection. An increase in garbage collection costs of 1.97 as a result of high city growth. Was that because of, to do with maybe council, what's the curbside collection, or is it specific, or it's just?
It was very specifically related to the growth of the city. So when the original budget estimates were produced, there wasn't a factoring in of what the city growth would actually be this financial year. So with more bins, it costs more. So that's now been a light.
And that wasn't included in budget? No. Okay. All right, that'll do for the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Lane.
I love how you hook in. Okay, so Robert, something you said triggered me, which is corporate property came across, so you inherited some stuff from other branches and it came with a maintenance cost when you did your checks. Now, each branch has a property maintenance budget. Did you secure money from those branches for the updates that they hadn't done, or is it just, we'll let that go for now and because they didn't do that role, we're going to bear the brunt of it? Is that the case, or did you ask them for money to cover the costs of those repairs that they hadn't done?
There was, when we moved the assets around to different asset custodians, there was a transfer of funds. But in a lot of cases, and it's not only the case with buildings, it's the case with a number of asset classes, the money that transferred wasn't sufficient to undertake the urgent works that are required. So we did get some money across, but we didn't get sufficient amount of money across. So that's why we, I guess, had no choice but to put it into the budget amendment for those urgent works. But moving forward into next year's budget, there'll be investment proposals to try and top up the maintenance budgets across a number of networks.
No worries, thanks for that. And I note that during Cyclone Alfred, we had inundation in the main building here that then impacted the electricals board, and that was quite a significant cost. Is that money included in this, or are we going to try and claim that back through disaster relief?
I think that money's included in this. That's the type of maintenance activity that we absolutely need to turn our minds to.
Yeah, so unforeseen stuff as well. Thank you.
All right, we'll move to the motion, which is on the screen. When somebody's ready to move that, you can. It's moved by Councillor Lane. Anyone to second? Mayor Raven. All those in favour? That has been carried. It has been carried. Councillor Stamp, how did you vote?
I'm against today.
Thank you. Does anyone have any general business for General Manager of Finance, Mark Burnett? Do you have any for us?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6.6, strategic risk update for December 2025. And Mark will come up for this one. I note that item 6.6 is a public report with a confidential attachment. So once Mark has given his public report, just check on your questions, making sure whether they're coming from confidential or public.
Thank you, Chair, Mayor and councillors for your time today. The Risk Management Compliance Framework requires strategic risk to be reviewed every 6 months, and the treatment action owners were engaged to provide updates, and these are outlined in the confidential attachments. The strategic risks have been reviewed and discussed with the executive leadership team, and they have been presented to the Audit and Risk Committee. Previously, the strategic risk report was presented as a confidential report, and what we've done this time is we've moved this to be a public report, but it does have confidential attachments with respect to the strategic risks. The results of the strategic risk review are contained in confidential attachments, and any discussion on these should be conducted in closed session, as publicly disclosing this information could prejudice council's negotiating position with respect to key commercial matters and expose sensitive strategic risk controls and treatments.
Mayor Raven.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you, and thank you, Mark, for coming and talking to me about the improvements you made on keeping some of this report public. I still think we can do better. So having reviewed what you've got in the 37 pages of confidential documentation, as we discussed when you came to see me, only 2 pages of it actually appears to have anything that could have any kind of commercial or actual risk-based implication, because everything else is either for information to make it easy for us to read so that the information's together, thank you for doing that when drafting the report, or it's so high level and vague that there's no way you can actually determine the risk that we're managing from it, which means it probably should and could be in the public forum. But those 2 pages of detailed sort of like solutions that you're applying to mitigate risk, understand why those could be perceived as confidential. I'm still not convinced they are, and I know that you'll provide advice by industry and others and legal advice, but when the community sees stuff that's hidden, they assume it's being hidden for a bad reason. And sometimes there are reasons we must hide it, and I accept that you've been given advice that says you must keep that information confidential, but I just don't accept, the people that are telling you that, I know they're doing it in good conscience, but I just think they're being too conservative. I don't think there's actually, even with the 2 pages that I agree with you, you could justifiably keep confidential. I just don't think there's that much risk in sharing that information. But I accept that there's some commercial impacts that could be had, and we don't want ratepayers having to pay more due to that. So thank you very much for the improvements. Next time I would love to see a 2-page confidential, or however many page those treatments are, confidential report, and everything else in the public domain. Thank you.
Councillor Lane.
Thank you very much. I was kind of along the same lines as the Mayor, saying that we've got a public version of it that's a couple of paragraphs versus the actual report. I read the report and I look at some of it and I think, is this risky for us to put out in the public domain? And as a local ratepayer and resident, I reckon I'd want to know it, quite frankly. I don't know that it necessarily harms the organisation. It's just my personal opinion that some of it probably could be, looked at reasonably. I think unless you're a risk management person, you don't understand some of the impacts of putting that information out into the public. And when you're out in the public and they say, look, it's about us, we should know about it. There are some subheadings in there that I think that's a reasonable assumption to make. Others, I agree with you, they should be confidential. But yeah, the report's a good read. I just kind of hope that it was a bit more public facing rather than the whole report just being in confidential.
Any other questions? There being none, there is a motion to adopt the report on the screen. Someone would like to move that. Councillor Hall, thank you, and seconded by Councillor St Ledger. All those in favour? Those being carried. Mayor Raven, how do you vote?
Abstain until we can get a more transparent report.
Thank you. Moving to item 6.7, council expenses to 30 September 2025. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. The council expenses and facilities policy requires a quarterly report outlining the expenditure incurred under this policy by the Mayor and each Divisional Councillor be presented to the City Governance Committee. So this report satisfies that requirement and is for the current financial year up to the 30th of September 2025. Now, I'll just point out the last report provided to the City Governance Committee was for the quarter ending 30th of June 2023 with respect to council expenses. So not reporting the council expenses to the committee for a period of 2 years is an oversight, and this has now been reinstated. In saying that, council's statutory requirements for reporting council expenses have been met with all necessary disclosures made in council's annual report over this period of time. So it's just the fact that the report wasn't being brought to committee. And also access to your monthly Power BI report that you receive for council expenses is available for you and staff. So we've now put it back in place, the reporting of the quarterly expenses to committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Lane.
Thanks, love the report. I love the fact that Division 2 spent $1,500 in divisional expenses. I would imagine that that would include the wreaths for Anzac and Remembrance Day, or Remembrance Day because it's from July, and the rest would be mail because we don't have any other expenses in Division 2. Thank you.
Any other questions? There being none, there is a motion on the screen. We have a mover. Moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Murphy. All those in favour? It's been carried unanimously. Thank you, Mark. Does anyone have any general business for General Manager of Corporate Governance? Do you have any for us?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6.8, proposed resumption strategy for the Logan and Gold Coast Faster Rail project. I note that item 6.8 is a public report with confidential attachments. We will receive the public report. And councillors, again, if you have confidential questions from the confidential section, please let me know and we'll see if we go in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report addresses the proposed resumption of council-owned freehold land by DTMR for the Logan and Gold Coast Faster Rail project. The report seeks council's endorsement of the recommended valuation strategy and also the recommendations with regards to the allocation of compensation funding. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Lane.
Thanks. My question isn't so much around the resumption of council properties, because I'm sure we're going to get bang for buck and going to get like for like, so that's great. Mine is more about the change in the scope of TMR's project, and it's out in the public domain that they're not doing the new overpass on Kingston Road over the Kingston train station. And what they've done is they've actually resumed a lot of land in Palm Avenue, in Hill Street, and I'm hoping that as a result of this, I know that we're going to get some housing put in there, and my hope is that it's multi-storey social housing instead of public housing, and the reason for that is its proximity to the train station, smaller families and affordability of accommodation. So I'd love to see a great advocacy strategy coming from that. And the second thing is that we asked about whether or not we could utilise a facility that's adjoining Kingston Station, and we're yet to have a response back from TMR, and I know that Councillor Jackson and I are very keen to progress that project and save council some money and provide a facility for a community group. I'm just wondering how far along your advocacy strategies for the land that was resumed that's not being used, and also the buildings that have been torn down as a result of the Faster Rail project. How far along is your advocacy on those?
Through the Chair, I'm happy to respond to that question, Councillor Lane. In terms of the question around the residual land strategy, currently TMR is still working on that piece of that strategy, so we don't have any concrete feedback on exactly what the purpose of that land would be. So as soon as that is available, we will bring that back to you. And the second part around the heritage building, my understanding is under the current works, they are responsible to undertake an assessment. And once they've done that, then they can provide feedback whether the building can be relocated and the suitability and the cost associated with that.
Thanks very much, Ella. I'm just wondering whether or not we can offer to do the assessment on the suitability of the building movement using council funds rather than waiting for TMR and the potential fire bugs that are around in the community. There seems to be Mary Street has had a history of buildings being burnt out rather than pulled down first. So I just have concerns around that. And the other thing is TMR's resumed land. We seem to be collecting a lot of people in tents along that corridor. Is there advocacy strategies occurring as a result of TMR, number one, not looking and maintaining the land that they've resumed? And number two, is the state housing strategy actually going in there and addressing the needs of the people along there? I note that on the corner opposite, we had a number of tents and we thought we'd worked with the groups to rehouse them, but unfortunately they relocated into a street less than a block away and have managed to upset a lot of local people with the litter and debris and activities that are going on there. So I just have concerns around the safety of local residents when it comes to TMR-owned land and their residual land strategy taking too long. I'd also like to note that the public housing building just down on Jacaranda Avenue, TMR gave one of the residual land blocks back to housing to build a car park, and it is now being used for a metal spare parts stripping section. So yes, I just have a few concerns about our advocacy strategy and how hard we're pushing on it. Thank you.
Happy to take that on notice and come back to you.
Mayor Raven.
I think I have to go into confidential for mine.
Someone to second that? Councillor Murphy, all those in favour? It's been carried unanimously. We're now in open session and happy for us to go to the motion. It's been moved by Councillor Murphy. Someone to second? Mayor Raven, thank you. Give you a little bit more. All those in favour? That's been carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Does anyone have any general business for the General Manager of Corporate Property? Yes, thank you, Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much. Director, I'm not sure if you're aware, but a couple of weeks ago, the former president of Lakota had a big spill on the footpath just in front of the car park here. And I want to thank the officers for their reactions to it, and I note that there's been a bit of tar put down there. That tar resulted in another person taking a spill. I'm just wondering when the upgrades to those, given that it's a seniors centre, when the upgrades to those footpaths in the car park across from it are going to occur.
I know the incident, very unfortunate incident that occurred, and we also had another staff member took a fall over there in a similar spot, Councillor Lane, so it's on our radar. In terms of the, I know they've gone and marked up the raised sections. I'd have to get back to you with the specific timeline in relation to when they're fixing those footpaths.
Champion, because even knowing it was there, I still managed to trip the other day.
Anyone else? Do you have any business for us?
No, thank you.
Thank you. There's no late fee reports.
Policies.
Oh, sorry. Hey, I'm moving on too fast. Back to here. Over the page. There it is. Gotcha. 6.9. The Phase 3 policy modernisation. Did not want to miss this one. Sorry, Emily, for nearly going past you. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. The purpose of today is to briefly update councillors on the progress of the Policy Task Force work and to seek endorsement of Phase 3 policies. So we're making, pleased to say we're making some really excellent progress. The task force has now completed rationalisation of the entire policy suite within 5 months, which is great. We are currently sitting at 219 policies consolidated down into about 40 new streamlined policies, which is placing us on par with our local government counterparts. We're really grateful for the feedback we've been receiving from councillors on these policies. It's been really constructive and ultimately helped us shape a better product. So really appreciate the engagement to date. So we are currently in the process of implementing Phase 1 and 2 policies. We're taking that carefully, and Phases 4 and 5 will come through to committee in the early in the new year. So today we have before us 4 policies, which represents 8 existing policies consolidated into 4. These are the first of the city operations policies that councillors would have seen, moving away from the Transform Logan theme policies. So we'll go through them really quickly today, and happy to take any questions or feedback along the way. The first we have is the CEO recruitment, appointment and performance policy. This is really just modernisation of the existing policy, and it's been drafted in a way that really shifts across existing content and reflects requirements under legislation. The second policy we have is the complaints policy. This is the amalgamation of 5 existing complaints-related policies into one. It's designed to ensure a one-stop shop for residents when making a complaint rather than having to visit 5 different policies. And it also strengthens our management of unreasonable and vexatious complaints as they come through. So a brief scenario for this we have is let's say a resident makes a complaint about a range of different things. Previously they would have had to look up to 5 different policies. With the new single streamlined policy, they only need to go to one source. The third policy we have in draft is the concealed leaks remission policy. Again, this is an existing policy. It's the modernisation of it. It's bringing the policy into line with current operational practices, and we've worked with Logan Water on this. Its purpose is to guide water charge remission for hidden underground leaks. Importantly, this policy brings in, strengthens hardship provisions. So in the example we have here, let's say a resident receives a large water bill discovering a concealed leak, but due to some illness circumstances, the repair is delayed. The resident's really worried about paying the bill. Under the old policy, there were really strict deadlines that applied. Under the new policy, there's more scope for applying a more flexible and compassionate approach. And finally, we have the modernisation of the insurance and indemnity policy. So this policy recognises that and ensures that councils are protected against liability incurred as a result of activities undertaken in their official capacity. So it improves clarity for councillors, removes duplication on coverage areas, exclusions and eligibility. So real strengthening of that policy. So an example here is where a councillor experiences an illness whilst on travelling for council purposes. The old policy didn't make it explicitly clear around the distinction between insured and non-insured matters. The new policy aims to make it really clear, so just a bit more usable. So just in wrapping up, once councillors are comfortable in endorsing this policy set, we will publish the policies, ensuring that any prescriptive information that falls out is published to the public. That's not so much the case In this set of policies it retains rather a lot of prescription. So we aim to publish these hopefully a little bit more quickly. There will still be that 6-month post-adoption review available, so anything that we need to fine-tune, we can do so along the way, 6 months after adoption. And then, of course, they'll be subject to ongoing review and evolution. So that's it from us. Happy to take any questions or feedback.
Mayor Raven.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, and apologies, Emily and Doug, for not getting this to you ahead of time and for not being at the PAG. I can't remember why I wasn't there, but I'm sure there was very good reason. Two things. One, praise first. So great work on the complaints policy and being very clear about defining what vexatious complaints are, because I feel that often council consumes a huge amount of resources in dealing with people whose only agenda is to consume those resources and punish council, but the only people that get punished are ratepayers who ultimately have to pay that cost. And recently I've seen people actually saying on social media, I'm going to cost council $100,000 by making this so difficult for you to process my complaint. And that sort of behaviour is completely unacceptable and a waste of time and money, and unfortunately is why we end up needing policies that make such clear definitions of it. The question that I have, or the suggestion and feedback, is around the councillor insurance policy. You've got on page 240 that no reimbursement is available for defamation or threatened defamation claims initiated by councillors or where the councillor is the plaintiff in any action. Is this a requirement by law? Because I completely understand the idea that if I do something that's optional in my capacity as a councillor and I get defamed for that, council would not protect my reputation. But where I undertake my duties as a spokesperson or as an advocate based on a council resolution and I get defamed, so I'm undertaking my role in good faith in the way that council has directed me to, and I get called corrupt or a whole bunch of other things that are completely untrue and completely unacceptable, it feels as though me having to spend somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000 to pursue a defamation claim, which is very unlikely to ever have costs awarded, all it will really get is an apology, seems very unreasonable, given that as the spokesperson of the city, if I'm being called corrupt, the city is essentially being called corrupt, and that reflects on every staff member and council and councillor as well. So is that legislation that prevents that reimbursement happening, or is that a choice that we've made in the policy? Did you? Oh, thank you.
I'll have a go. I know we do have the city solicitor here if we need some advice, but my understanding is that it is potentially, it's your policy, it's an option to put that in the policy in relation to the taking of defamation. Generally would advise against it, Mayor Raven. So the policy is generally designed to fight action being taken against an individual rather than bringing on action for defamation. Keeping in mind it's not council that's being defamed, it's the individual, so any action for defamation would be basically privately funding litigation, which you potentially could mount an argument that it ties back to your role as a mayor or councillor. If we were to go down that pathway, and once again I would advise against it, it would be we'd have to be very careful to be able to justify the use of ratepayers' money to basically bring on private action for fighting defamation. I think that's something that would need to be carefully considered, and I think something like that would certainly need to be brought back to council before any decision was made under this particular policy as to whether to support the mayor or councillor in taking an action for defamation. There have been other councils in the past that I think have funded cases for defamation, and they certainly have been open to a lot of criticism in relation to the use of ratepayers' funding to fight those particular matters. I think we'd need to be careful because councillors, as politicians, historically have come under a lot of criticism. It's part of the landscape. I understand that there is a line that can be crossed, and I guess that's where councillors have tried to use other means to basically set the record straight rather than going to litigation in relation to defamation. So I guess it's something I think that could be considered in the policy, but I think it's something that would need to be carefully considered, and there would have to be some very strong guardrails put around the use of ratepayers' funds to take action for defamation.
So the answer is no, legislation doesn't prevent it from happening.
I don't believe it does.
Thank you. And I fully appreciate all of those risks. I know Mayor Tate, as we speak, is trying to claim some defamation costs for the conduct of another councillor towards him. And I think that if we were to introduce something like that, it would have to have caps and it would have to have a decision of council to endorse it, because ultimately councillors would have to be the ones who decided whether or not their council was conducting themselves in like the business of council. I agree completely that where there are any number of things that I could do on a day-to-day basis that council hasn't endorsed, and so therefore is completely my own responsibility. But when I do nothing more than stand up as the spokesperson of the city as directed by council through a resolution, it's then very hard pill to swallow that there is, like, if it was any other costs incurred in doing my job, if I drove to the city and parked for half an hour because I had to attend a meeting to advocate for Rochedale Road, for instance, then council would reimburse me for that cost. But if in doing that advocacy for Rochedale Road I was accused of being corrupt, or a campaign was waged against me that was completely unfair and uncalled for and started from me having a resolution of council that directed me to undertake that work, that feels like it's a cost incurred in my work that I would not have incurred if I was not being directed to do so by council. So in that circumstance, it feels like there should be some consideration, if not for entirely reimbursing, some kind of coverage, even if it's only 5 or 10%. But at the moment, there's none. It just says you can't even consider it. So even having the ability to bring it forward for council to consider, and if councillors say no, we think that you contributed to the reason why you're being accused or why you're being potentially defamed, you can't have it, fair enough. But at the moment, there's no window whatsoever to accept. And probably the clearest example is flood mapping, where as the spokesperson, I'm the one delivering the message. Not even a decision of council really that forces us to do flood mapping the way that we've done it. It's a decision of the state, so it's completely outside of our hands. But nonetheless, I'm being held personally responsible for that. And I'm comfortable with that. I understand that that's part of my role. And most people do so in a respectful way that we would accept in a democracy, but some people don't. Some people cross the line, and when that line is crossed, the only option I've got is spending up to 20% of my annual income, which is not like insignificant, to be able to defend my reputation. And that seems incredibly unfair. So that's why in the interest of ensuring council against action taken, in this case, the action that someone is taking against me is defamatory action because they're defaming me. But I appreciate historically why we haven't done it. I'd just be interested to hear from councillors if they thought it was worth. We'll endorse this today, I'm sure. I'm not seeking to change it today, but just seeking whether councillors would be interested in investigating how that option might be implemented.
No contrary. Councillor Lane.
Just on that, Mr Mayor, in that meeting, I also asked whether council staff were covered for it, and they are not. But again, the question was asked predominantly if a council staff member is defamed during the course of their business and just say is named on a social media post, let's say related to flood mapping, that they have no recourse to seek costs of having to get a person to cease and desist. So that was part of the process, and that was my understanding. It was made very clear that that is a personal matter for the staff member who feels defamed. So can I just ask a question? Have you finished your questions? So can I ask a question? On page 165 of the report, I asked, I said that I agreed with the vexatious policy, but the comment was, the new policy says where such behaviour occurs, council may implement a range of appropriate measures, including limiting or ceasing contact to ensure public resources remain focused on handling genuine complaints. In the main, I'm kind of good with this, but when I'm not told that I'm being restricted from receiving someone's emails, I take exception to that. And I will say this, that on a social media post, it was reflected that councillors hadn't responded to, I suppose, an email that had come through to council. And when I reviewed my emails, I realised I hadn't received it, and it was said that it was, I can't remember the word that was used, it was set aside, it was, yes, it was quarantined. I found that a bit unusual that I hadn't been informed. So I think, and I said to Emily, I would ask this question, if we have a set of public policies that we've amalgamated, and congratulations, that was a huge job that you guys have done on this, will the procedures that accompany the policy be readily available on the public sphere, as in on the public webpage that are attached to that specific policy? So if it's a policy about vexatious complainants, will the procedure that says that they may quarantine an email be readily available for the public to read and understand so that nothing is hidden? Because the procedure is the part that interests them most. A good example is on our webpage in relation to public gardens and public parking. In order to make it more easily read by the public, there's actually some incorrect information in one of those particular areas. And when we picked it up, it was said, oh, well, this is just, to make it easier for people to understand, but it actually misled them. So I hope that the procedures that is attached to this policy, will it be available publicly? So if you click on the policy, it will have the procedures linked right next to it that says what council will do and how they will do it.
Through the chair, and we do have Mark in the room as well who might want to add, but my understanding is that the administrative actions complaints procedure is publicly available and it's on the website. It will remain on the website and fully available.
Again, we've done a lot of policies into this, so it's not just administrative complaints, but if there is a policy in relation to the CEO recruitment and there is a procedure, will the procedure be attached to the policy so that people can read it, or do they have to go hunting for council procedures as part of this? It will be readily available and easily accessible.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. And that's why it's taking a few months to get from adoption to implementation stage, because we want to make sure we get this right.
Yep.
We want to make sure that we don't have a policy stored over here and a procedure over here. We've got them closely linked. There's a range of public-facing procedures that relate to the policies we have coming through, including here today. So those procedures will remain available on the website and be visually linked, so residents can easily access one point of truth.
No worries. And so if you have a policy and there's a public procedure, are there any policies that won't have public procedures attached to them?
Through the chair, there's a range of public-facing procedures that attach to the policies, and where those exist, they will continue to exist. There's also a range of back-of-house operational procedures.
But they're not expected to go up.
They're not expected, and those are things that involve details that members of the public might not need to access. Of course, they'll still have access through RTI mechanisms and information mechanisms.
But nobody will be negatively impacted by the policies being in one section and the procedures being attached to them.
That's the case where we're working to ensure that we establish that single point of truth for residents. So,
thank you.
And
I said I was going to ask this question, and I did.
Yeah, thank you. And it's very valid, and it is taking us some time to work to get that right. So we've got,
so if the procedures aren't up immediately after the policy changes, it is coming.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, through the chair. I just got one question. With the changes in the Local Government Act, have you reflected that in all these policies?
Thank you, through the chair. That's a really good question. It's something that our city solicitor and our the organisational services team have reflected upon, because the legislation. My understanding is the legislation is not yet in force. The policies don't reflect that yet. However, we have discussed a mechanism for. Once the legislation does come into force, that for any amendments to the policies to be made concurrent to that, to ensure that that's captured.
Thank you. And through the chair, my apologies, I'm going to have to leave.
Councillor Stemp.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just regarding the concealed leak remission policy, just wanted to check, obviously we advocated quite heavily for this back in 2022 and there were some changes put through. I noticed a lot of it was relating to extreme water events. For example, it was during a flood period where the elderly lady didn't realise that she had a water leak because it had been raining for weeks on end. That's still part of this, isn't it? Nothing's been changed in that space. That will still be relevant?
Oh, yes, my understanding is yes, correct.
So nothing has changed in that space. In terms of the bulk water charge, that's still all, nothing in that has changed. I just wanted to be clarified. I couldn't see it change, but I just wanted to be sure before we put that through. So. And just the second one is, following on from what Councillor Lane said, I made an inquiry recently about a policy that was passed recently, the natural areas one, and there was an element in there that they said to me that based on the new policy, you can no longer do something which we've done before, and that would be then published publicly by the end of the year. And I was just a bit confused by that because I don't recall that being part of the policy, but I'm believing that will form part of the procedures. So I might come and follow up with you because I was just getting a bit concerned that there's going to be changes in the policy, in the procedures that we're not seeing the procedures, we're only seeing the policy, and that there are changes that are potentially happening which maybe we're not aware of. So just might come and get some clarity from you on that one if I can, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Stemp. I'd really like to better understand the issue. We're working to ensure that so before the policies are published on the website and come into effect, we'll be sharing with councillors details of the procedural elements that have come out of the old policy set. So councillors will have that information at hand ahead of them coming into effect. So
branches effectively shouldn't be making, if the policy's there but they're not published yet, should they be making decisions on the new policy then?
We're currently engaging with branches on the implementation path.
Yeah, that's all right.
And being clear that the policies haven't yet come into effect.
No.
I think there's some energy to.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It
have
might
them
be
come
just
into
worth getting the clarity. I'll chat to you about it anyway. I just wanted to bring that up. Just to
Thank
make
you.
sure we're on
Welcome
the same
that.
page.
Thank you.
Having no further questions, we will table the PowerPoint from earlier. If we can have someone to move that. Councillor St Ledger, seconded by Councillor Stemp. All those in favour? It's been carried unanimously. And the recommendation is now on the screen. And somebody is ready to move that. Councillor Lane, thank you. Someone to second it? Councillor St Ledger. Well, all those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Does anyone have any general business for Emily? Do you have any for... yep, that's good feedback. Excellent. Do you have any for us?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, there being no late reports, that concludes the agenda for today. Does anyone have any general business for the Executive General Manager? Robert, thank you. Mayor Raven.
Robert, how would we further the investigation into having defamation included in the policy? Would it just be a GB request, or is that something that you could get us some details on and bring back, and then I bring it to councillors, the GB requesting a report?
It's something that I can get the details on and bring back.
Thank you.
So I declare the Governance Committee meeting on the 2nd of December closed at 1:17. Thank you.